Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. They say compromise is key in any relationship, but sometimes compromise just hands your house over to people whose favorite hobby is take, and never ever give back. Today in the rLounge, a simple favor. Up first, it always starts with just a few days, a suitcase or two, a smile, and the promise that it's only temporary. In-laws invaded my home for a surprise stay, so I got them trespassed. I never expected to become the family villain for simply wanting control over my own home, but here we are. The moment I opened the door, I noticed unfamiliar shoes in the entryway. Then I heard voices coming from my kitchen, voices I recognized and honestly dreaded. My in-laws. They weren't supposed to be visiting. We had no plans, yet there they were, making themselves comfortable in my house. My wife came to greet me with this nervous smile on her face. "Surprise," she said, as if this was some kind of gift. "Mom and Dad are staying with us for a bit." I asked what the hell was going on. She explained that her parents were having issues with their condo renovation and needed a place to stay just for a few days. Apparently, she had given them our spare key without consulting me because she knew I'd be tired from my trip and didn't want to bother me with it. Let me be clear. I have never had a good relationship with my in-laws. From day one, they've made it abundantly clear they think their daughter settled by marrying me. They've criticized everything from my house to my lifestyle choices. Every holiday or family gathering has been an exercise in restraint on my part. But for the sake of keeping peace, I reluctantly agreed to the agreement. Just a few days was something I could endure. I made it clear to my wife that I expected them to respect our space and our rules. The next morning, I woke up to find my mother-in-law had completely rearranged our kitchen cabinets. When I opened the pantry, I noticed several of my snacks and food items were missing. When I asked about it, she casually mentioned she'd thrown them out because they were processed garbage, and no wonder you have that gut. I started making breakfast for myself, and she hovered behind me, criticizing my technique for scrambling eggs. "You're using too high heat," she said, before physically pushing me aside and taking over. "Let me show you how it's done properly." Meanwhile, my father-in-law had set up what looked like a permanent office at our dining table. Papers everywhere, his laptop, even a printer he'd brought from their place. When I mentioned we'd need the table for dinner, he waved dismissively and said, "We'll figure something out." That's when I noticed their luggage in the guest room. 3 massive suitcases. Nobody packs 3 suitcases for a few days. I confronted my wife about it and she just shrugged it off. "They might need options," she said, avoiding eye contact. 2 days into this nightmare, I overheard my mother-in-law on the phone in the guest room. "We'll be staying at least a month, maybe 2, she was saying. "The contractor says the work won't be done until then, and honestly, it's nice to spend time with our daughter without him always hovering." I was furious. I waited until her parents went out for a walk and confronted my wife. She broke down and admitted she knew they needed longer than a few days, but was afraid to tell me the truth. I told her this was completely unacceptable. They were intruding on our privacy and our marriage. I set a firm deadline, 1 week, and they needed to find alternative arrangements. She reluctantly agreed, but asked me not to tell her parents directly. She wanted to find the right moment to break it to them. 2 days later, I came home from work to find 6 cars parked outside our house. I walked in to discover my in-laws had invited extended family members over for dinner, people I barely knew. They were using our good dishes, drinking our expensive wine that was being saved for our anniversary, and acting like they owned the place. My mother-in-law introduced me to her cousin like I was the guest. "This is our daughter's husband," she said with the fake smile. Later, I overheard her in the kitchen telling someone how it's such a shame our daughter couldn't find someone more established, and how the house is nice, but so much smaller than when she grew up in. I retreated to our bedroom, feeling like a stranger in my own home. When everyone finally left, I confronted my wife again. She accused me of being antisocial and said I should be happy her family wants to spend time with us. "They're just trying to make the best of their situation." The next day, I came home early to find my father-in-law in my home office, going through my desk drawers. When I asked what he was doing, he claimed he was looking for a stapler. But I spotted some of my financial documents on the desk. I asked what he was doing with my documents. He said he was just trying to help organize and suggested I needed a better filing system. I told him my office was off limits and stay out of my personal documents. He acted offended, like I was the one crossing boundaries. The argument escalated when my mother-in-law came in. She sided with her husband, of course, and in her dramatic gesturing, knocked over and broke a crystal paperweight my grandfather had given me before he died. When I reacted, she dismissed it as just a thing and said I was being materialistic. My wife took their side, accusing me of being unwelcoming and unnecessarily territorial. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These people invaded my home, go through my personal belongings, break my stuff, and I'm the bad guy? That night, I installed a lock on my office door. When my wife noticed, she demanded I remove it immediately because it was insulting to her parents. I refused. This led to another huge fight, ending with me sleeping on the couch because apparently I was the one being unreasonable. When the 1-week deadline arrived, I reminded everyone of our agreement. My in-laws acted completely oblivious, like this conversation had never happened. My wife pulled me aside and admitted she never told them about the deadline because she couldn't find the right time. She then dropped the bomb that she had actually told them they could stay as long as they needed. I was done. I told her either her parents leave or I would temporarily move out until they did. She accused me of abandoning her and emotionally blackmail. I packed an overnight bag and stayed with a friend. When I returned the next day hoping the situation had improved, I discovered they'd actually moved more of their belongings in. Worse, they had taken over our master bedroom. My wife had given them our room because they need more space and moved our things to the guest room. I also found out they had thrown away more of my personal belongings that were cluttering the house, including some collectibles I'd had for years. My wife dismissed my anger, saying they were just trying to help organize. At this point, I realized I was dealing with a coordinated takeover of my home. I consulted a friend who works in security about my legal options. He confirmed that since it's my house, it's in my name only, purchased before our marriage, I had every right to evict unwanted guests. I sent them a formal text message stating they need to vacate my home office and master bedroom immediately. They laughed it off. My father-in-law texted back a laughing emoji and told my wife I was being childish. My wife begged me to just deal with it for a little while longer. The final straw came when I returned home the next day to find my in-laws had invited a contractor to discuss renovations to my home office. They wanted to convert it into a more functional space for my father-in-law to work, without consulting me, in my own home. I lost it. I told them explicitly they needed to leave immediately. My mother-in-law started screaming that I was tearing the family apart. My father-in-law threatened to make life difficult for me. My wife sided with them again, saying I was overreacting and needed to calm down. I packed another bag, told my wife I'd return when her parents were gone, and left. From my friend's place, I sent a final warning via text. They had 24 hours to leave, or I would take legal action to have them removed. I was hit with a barrage of texts from family members, calling me selfish, cruel, and a terrible husband. My wife pleaded with me to stop creating drama and just come home. When the 24 hours were up, I returned with police officers to serve a trespass notice. The scene was as dramatic as you'd expect. My mother-in-law broke down crying, acting like I was throwing them onto the street. My father-in-law threatened to sue me for everything I had. My wife was hysterical, accusing me of humiliating her family. The police explained the legal situation. Since the house was in my name and there was no rental agreement, her parents were considered guests, not tenants. They had 24 hours to vacate, or they would be forcibly removed and potentially charged with trespassing. I tried to enter my house after the police left, but found my wife had changed the locks. I had to call a locksmith and showed my deed to get back into my own house. I spent that night in a hotel. The next day, I returned with police again to ensure my in-laws had left. They were gone. My wife had packed a bag and left a note saying she was going to stay with her parents and that I should think about what I've done. I immediately changed the locks and security system codes. That evening, I received a lengthy text from my wife claiming I had destroyed our marriage over nothing and that I was a controlling monster who couldn't accept her family. I didn't respond. Instead, I'd pour myself a drink. Looking around at the mess they left behind, I realized this was probably the end of my marriage. But honestly, if this is how my little wife respected my boundaries in my home, maybe that's for the best. I don't know what happens next with my marriage, but I know one thing for certain. My in-laws will never step foot in my house again, and honestly, I'm sleeping better already. Small update. I received a divorce paper citing cruel treatment as the grounds. The petition painted me as controlling and abusive for not allowing her parents to stay in our home. What was more alarming was discovering she had been systematically draining our joint accounts since the conflict began. Thankfully, most of our finances were separate, but she had managed to take several $1,000s. I immediately froze the remaining joint accounts and secured my personal finances. My attorney assured me this unauthorized taking of funds would not look good for her in court. The final piece of this puzzle came from an unexpected source. A mutual connection who knows both my wife's family and me reached out with some information. Apparently, the story about condo renovations was completely fabricated. The truth was far more concerning. My in-laws' home was being foreclosed due to financial mismanagement. They had been planning all along to move in permanently with the eventual goal of taking over my house entirely. Even more shocking, my wife had been aware of the real situation from the beginning, but deliberately hid the truth from me. This revelation explained so much. Why they brought so many belongings, why they were rearranging my home and even planning renovations, and why my wife was so insistent they stay indefinitely. It wasn't a temporary solution to a renovation problem. It was a calculated plan to solve their housing crisis at my expense. My wife's sister contacted me. We've always gotten along well, and she's more level-headed than the rest of her family. So here I stand in the middle of divorce proceedings I never wanted, dealing with threats from in-laws I never liked, and discovering layers of deception from the woman I married. 3 suitcases for a few days? Please. And your wife? She wasn't clueless. She was the inside job. She knew exactly what they were doing and tried to play you like you wouldn't notice your own house being slowly annexed. Throwing out your stuff, taking over your office, moving into your bedroom. In what world is that okay? The condo renovation lie makes it even more gross. They weren't stuck, they were scheming. And they really thought they could gaslight you into just accepting it? Unreal. Update 2. It's been over a month since my last update, and the situation has evolved in ways I never anticipated. I want to thank everyone for the supportive messages and advice. They've been a lifeline during this chaotic time. The final court appearance in our divorce proceedings was eye-opening, to say the least. My wife's attorney presented a narrative that painted me as controlling and cruel for not allowing her elderly parents to stay in our home during their time of need. They conveniently omitted the fact that her parents are in their early 60s, perfectly capable, and had planned this invasion all along. When my attorney presented the evidence, photos of the damage to my home, documentation of their attempt to renovate my office without permission, the threatening voicemails, and most importantly, proof that the condo renovation story was fabricated, the judge's demeanor shifted noticeably. The court ordered a temporary restraining order against my in-laws, prohibiting them from contacting me or coming near my property. Small victory, but I'll take it. Another surprising development came when I learned my wife wasn't actually living with her parents as she'd claimed. A former neighbor spotted her moving into an apartment with another man. Apparently she's been seeing someone else. The timeline suggests the relationship began before the whole in-law situation erupted. Suddenly, her willingness to side with her parents over me made more sense. The marriage was already over in her mind, and allowing her parents to move in was likely part of some twisted exit strategy. The most unexpected turn of events came when I received a package at my door with no return address. Inside were several of my missing valuables, including my grandfather's watch and some family photos I thought were lost forever. A handwritten note explained that my wife's sister had secretly recovered these items from her parents' storage unit and wanted to return them to their rightful owner. She apologized for not being able to find everything, but promised to keep looking. Just when I thought things were calming down, I received notice that my in-laws were attempting to sue me for emotional distress caused by having them removed from my property. My attorney assured me that the case had absolutely no merit and prepared a countersuit for the property damage they caused. As predicted, the judge dismissed their lawsuit as frivolous and issued them a stern rebuke to both my in-laws and their attorney for wasting court resources. The look on their faces when the judge called their claim one of the most blatant attempts of manipulation she'd seen in her courtroom was priceless. My wife reached out last week asking to talk things through, without lawyers present. I declined and insisted all communication go through proper legal channels. The divorce proceedings have accelerated unexpectedly after my wife's attorney withdrew from her case. Apparently, there were irreconcilable differences between them, likely related to her dishonesty. Without proper representation and with mounting evidence against her, she's agreed to a settlement much more favorable than I expected. The paperwork should be finalized within weeks rather than the months or years I'd anticipated. My in-laws have apparently moved on to another relative's home with a similar emergency story. This family member contacted me after recognizing the pattern, thanks to the awareness that's now spreading throughout the extended family. I was able to give them advice on establishing firm boundaries before the situation escalated. They've since limited the stay to 2 weeks with a signed agreement, something I wish I'd done from the start. I'm now living in a peaceful, organized house that feels like mine again. The divorce will be finalized soon. My finances are secure. The fact your wife was already moved in with another guy just makes it all click, though. She wasn't just choosing her parents over you. She'd already checked out of the marriage and was setting you up to take the fall. That's brutal, but at least now you know the truth instead of wasting years trying to fix something she's already burned down. And that lawsuit? What a joke. The judge literally calling it blatant manipulation must have felt like justice in real time. Honestly, your in-laws should be grateful you didn't charge them rent for squatting. Sounds like you're landing on your feet, though. House is peaceful, finances locked down, divorce nearly done. If anything, this whole nightmare just confirmed you were the only sane person in the room the whole time. Have you ever had a just a few days guest turn your life upside down? Let us know in the comments below. Up next, one dad's attempt at surviving his daughter's big day without losing his mind, or his house. Am I the a-hole for not allowing my oldest daughter to use my home as her wedding venue because her mother and her family will be invited? I had a restraining order against them until recently. I'm in a pretty bad situation right now. When my stepdaughter got married 2 years ago, she used our home as the wedding venue. We have a meadow in our backyard that is able to accommodate a large number of people, as well as an empty, clean barn that can be set up for dinner tables. My daughter was supposed to marry at another location last year, but because of the pandemic, the venue shut down permanently. She's now asked to use my home for the wedding, but I told her my issues with that. I had a restraining order against her mother, my ex, and a few members of her family after threats and harassment were directed towards my wife and myself. The restraining order expired mid-last year, but we haven't heard from them since, but I stayed firm in my decision. This has upset my daughter greatly, and she screamed at me, which she's never done. I offered to give her $15,000 for an alternative venue, but now she's adamant about it being our home. I feel extremely uncomfortable giving my ex and her family access to my home because that's where the washrooms will be. My daughter has put this issue on Facebook, and now I have all of my extended family against me. This has also stirred up my ex and her family against me. And worse is that my wife and stepdaughter are now being accused of trying to ruin my daughter's wedding when they haven't played any part in it. I'm planning on giving in and letting my daughter use our home for the wedding later this year, but I'm going to tell my wife and stepdaughter not to be around for it, which I'm sure is going to create a bunch of other issues. Am I the a-hole? Overall verdict was not the a-hole. But let's check with some relevant comments to understand. First up, not the a-hole. Go renew the restraining order if your ex and her family are harassing you and explain to your daughter that she can either have the wedding at your home without her mother and her side of the family, or she can accept the $15,000 and have it elsewhere. But for personal safety reasons, you will not let her mother into your home. Otherwise, rent porta potties. They have some super fancy ones for wedding venues. Trailers don't look or smell like porta potties with a washroom. The OP replies, I won't be renewing the order because I don't have any real standing this time. I also don't want to renew it because I do want to attend my daughter's wedding without causing any issues. But the outdoor bathrooms are an excellent idea. I have texted the idea to my daughter. Someone else chimes in, not the a-hole, but how is it that you raised your, presumably, adult daughter in such a way that when you don't give her what she wants, she screams at you and goes after you on Facebook? And why do you now think the right thing to do is to give in to her antics by letting her do the wedding at your house after all? My own daughter just got married and I provided financial support. If she had screamed at me about anything related to the wedding, you can be sure that financial support would have been withdrawn. The OP replies, my daughter has never raised her voice at me, but I can only imagine that other family members are riling her up. She also posted something on Facebook that didn't explicitly blame me, but my own sister made it into a circus that involved my ex and her family. I feel badly that my daughter is put under all this stress due to my ex and my issues. Update to my post. Posted same day. I messaged my daughter about the outdoor trailer bathrooms, and she has refused and said it was a disgusting idea. She then accused me of treating her worse than my stepdaughter, and that I play favorites, and that I'm a terrible father. She does not want the wedding at our home anymore and hung up. She is no longer picking up my calls. I got an angry call from my mother who says she is hosting her wedding instead, and that I will not be welcomed at the wedding. My father will be walking my daughter down the aisle instead of me. Thanks everyone for the advice. I appreciate it. But I feel like I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I'm completely broken. Let's get another relevant thought from the audience. Not the a-hole. I'm constantly baffled by the massive levels of entitlement and self-centeredness people show. All your daughter cares about is that she gets her due, which is your home location as a venue. She shows zero empathy or feelings or care about the fact that you actually had such a bad falling out with your ex-wife that you had to take a restraining order. You didn't make the biggest mistake of your life at all. Your concerns were very reasonable. Your daughter was the one who behaved like an absolute self-centered brat with no consideration for anyone else, including her parents. On top of it, she took it nuclear by sharing it with the world and washing dirty linen in public. You did nothing wrong here. All this did was reveal the true character of your kid. That's the sad part. The thing is, it would have come out sooner or later, so you're better off it came out now instead of later. The OP replies, I was always very close to my daughter and she's had to deal with a lot of issues because of my issues with my ex. But she's always remained sweet to me and has never asked anything from me. But in hindsight, I can see why she has finally reached her limit with dealing with my issues. I'm absolutely gutted that she's reached that point with me. I really should have just sucked it up for one night. But I know that things are just going to get much worse because my stepdaughter's husband works for my father. But my parents favor my daughter, so I only know this is going to get worse and I'm feeling very fearful over what's going to come. You didn't make the biggest mistake of your life here. You set a boundary that was completely reasonable. You weren't saying no to your daughter's wedding. You were saying no to putting yourself, your wife, and your stepdaughter in a situation that could easily become toxic or even unsafe. That's not favoritism, that's protecting your home. It's heartbreaking that your daughter lashed out and went public with this, but that's her choice. You even offered a generous alternative with the $15,000 and the bathroom rental idea, so you weren't being inflexible at all. She just didn't like the answer. Update January 11th, 2022. 10 months later. I've had many messages asking me for an update that I've only noticed after logging back into this account. I have a fairly positive update. My daughter's wedding took place in October last year. After a few months of my daughter refusing to talk to me, my wife saw how I was being affected by the situation and said I should just let my daughter use our house without any restrictions, that we should lock up our valuables and hope for the best. I was extremely hesitant, but at my wife's insistence, I arranged a meeting at my mother's home and made the offer. I was immediately told that it was too late and that the new invitations were already sent out and the wedding would be happening at my mother's property. But my daughter asked for the $15,000 I originally offered for an alternative venue to be used to renovate my mother's home a little for the wedding. I just accepted that this was the best it was going to get and gave her the money. My daughter still didn't warm up to me after this and would only reply to texts occasionally. Then a month before the wedding, I was told to come to the wedding without my wife. My daughter said that similar to how my wife and I felt, her mother and some members of her maternal family felt uncomfortable being around us due to the expired restraining order. She said she was willing to fight them to have her father at the wedding, but my wife, stepdaughter, and her husband were not invited. I was incredibly disappointed. I wanted to confront my daughter and potentially not go to the wedding at all if my wife wasn't invited. But my wife said that there's too much bad blood and I should just attend the wedding quietly for my daughter's sake. I ended up attending the wedding alone and left once dinner was done. While I got to see my daughter get married, my heart feels heavy that it was such a conflict-filled situation. Even having me walk her down the aisle became such a touchy subject that she just ended up having her half-brother walk her down the aisle instead. When I went to congratulate my daughter before I left, she angrily told me that she should have just eloped because of me and my ex, and that it's disgusting that her own parents ruined every aspect of her wedding, that she can't wait to build a life separate from everyone. I apologized and cried on my way home. A part of me is happy that my daughter still somewhat is talking to me, but I do regret putting her under so much stress. It's not her fault her parents can't get along. I'm just hopeful that we can slowly start repairing our relationship. Time for some final comments from the audience. First up, I am sorry about the whole situation. You didn't do anything wrong and your daughter sounds very selfish. From what I've read, you and your ex did not ruin her wedding. She was fixated on using your house, and after you said no, she decided to just blame everything bad on you. I also think her not allowing your wife to attend was unreasonable. You didn't want your ex and her family at your house. They decided they didn't want your wife and family at your mother's house? I know you're hopeful about repairing the relationship, but it doesn't sound like she wants it. Be careful if she does reach out in the future that she's not just doing it to use you for money or similar. The OP replies, I really don't think it's all about money since my parents and her new husband are well off. She just thinks I treat her worse than my stepdaughter after the whole venue situation, and I hate that she feels that way, even after I've tried to explain my reasoning. And she's definitely been caught between my and her mother's issues. It's not her fault that her mother escalated it to the point of us needing to file restraining orders. It's just been a highly stressful situation, and I feel very badly that I played a part in making her wedding not a completely happy event. She does seem to be open to replying to my texts occasionally, so I'm hoping with time she'll warm up to me again. Someone else adds, but my wife said that there's too much bad blood and I should just attend the wedding quietly for my daughter's sake. This is very mature of your wife. The OP replies, she's an incredible person, but the really unfortunate part out of all of this whole situation has been the fallout that my wife and stepdaughter have to deal with. There's members of my family who think my wife played a part in not having our home made available for my daughter, even though I've repeatedly told them that she in fact pushed to let the wedding happen at our home. Even worse is that both my daughter and my stepdaughter's husband worked for my father. My son-in-law had to change companies because of how awkward the entire situation was since my father was fully supporting my daughter. So my stepdaughter ended up moving 2 hours away, which has upset my wife greatly. I just keep thinking that if maybe we'd just sucked it up for one day and just let the wedding happen at our home in the first place, we wouldn't be in this terrible situation. Someone else wants to chime in. I'm very confused about why your own parents and sister are on your daughter's, her mom's side in the situation. Is there information being left out? Regardless, I'm sorry to hear about what you're going through. I hope things work out for the better with you and your daughter. The OP replies, my parents despise my ex as much as I do, if not more. They contemplated getting a protection order against my ex at one point too, but they compensate by favoring my daughter to the extreme. My sister is miserable and likes to gossip with my ex. My parents and I do not have a relationship with my sister. She wasn't invited to the wedding. My mother is in the mindset that my daughter should come first over everybody because her parents are divorced. I don't feel that's a healthy way to raise someone, but I can only control my actions. It's just dysfunctional family dynamics all around. The daughter's side. Thanks to a Redditor for letting me know about this post. Good job, Dad. I found your Reddit post. I hope all the validation was worth it because you're never going to see me or my baby again. But who cares? A bunch of internet strangers think you are the hero and I'm an evil, money-hungry witch. February 14th, 2022. I hope you are real happy. Not only was my wedding miserable since you and Mom divorced, my whole life has been. You want to talk about how horrible she is? Yeah, you're right. She is. But so are you. You always put me in a position where I felt that even saying the slightest positive thing about her would get me in trouble. My birthdays were horrible because you both could not grow up and behave. I hate my birthdays now because I can only remember you screaming at each other. You never cared about me. You cared about hurting her more. I tried to be so understanding. I always told myself that my mom was worse. But no, you were horrible too. You made me feel a second-class citizen at home. You showed my stepsister so much more love and care than you did me. You know how much it hurt seeing you accommodate her every wish at her wedding? Do you know how much it hurt when you basically laughed in my face when I asked for the same? You are not the polite martyr that you made everyone believe you are. I'm done with you. I was done with you when you kept making remarks at my wedding. I was done with you when you basically screamed at me for not inviting your wife and her daughter. They don't feel like family. Neither do you now. Oh yeah, I'm expecting. That was a surprise. I was thinking of calling you, but after seeing your posts, I don't want to. My therapist says that you and my mother are the cause for my childhood trauma, and this year I will cut out toxic people. If you care so much about the money, I'll mail the check to you. I'm done with you, with your wife and your daughter that you love so much. Don't worry, I'm also done with your ex. Hope you are happy, and I hope that Reddit karma is a good substitute for me. Oh wait, you actually care for Reddit karma. Additional comments from the daughter. Comment 1. I'm going to be honest here. His comments were the ones that hurt me most, because he has always been like that. His stepdaughter could do no wrong. Even though she was my biggest bully at home, she would directly taunt me that my own father loved her more than me. She would do crap like cry when I didn't lend her stuff and tell my father I slapped her. Or she would take my stuff and pretend it was hers. Also, her husband didn't get fired because of me. His performance was critically lacking. He was leaning back because he thought he secured his future there. He made a lot of careless mistakes and would basically dispose of company time as his own. His wife is another story. She was always the saint in front of him. She would never straight up tell me she hated me or so. She would do little indirect knacks, so she could always say she didn't mean it. I hated being there. I hated being at my mom's place because she cared more about her boyfriends. So I just spend most of my time with friends or just outside or with my grandparents. My grandparents are honestly the only saving grace. Even they are so disappointed with my father, their own son. Comment 2. I agree. It was mostly the same with me. I honestly was happy for the divorce because I thought they would be less miserable apart. They just made it each other's missions to hurt each other and used me as a bargaining chip during that. I'm sorry you also went through that. Have you been able to work through all that resentment? I am still at the very beginning of that journey with my therapist, but right now it seems almost impossible to not resent them. You did what any reasonable parent would do. You tried to protect your home, your family, and your peace. You offered alternatives. You gave them money for renovations, and you even showed up for your daughter's wedding despite being excluded and hurt. That's not ruining her life. That's called being a reasonable adult in an impossible situation. Is there ever a right way to handle family grudges during major life events like weddings? Have you ever had to navigate something similar? We want to hear your thoughts. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.